first of all, how did you even get involved in that? How did you get invited? And how did you earn your way into that world of business?
Here's how this all started. It's a story of, you could either say synchronicity. I like to think of it as a providence smiling on us, right? So back in the 80s, there was a magazine, national magazine called Omni. It's gone now, but think of it kind of as a combination of Wired, Fast Company, and National Geographic.
Yeah.
Had science bits, some great photography, and every month in the middle, there's eight or 10 of these little, literally silver pages.
Yeah.
And they're all little short stories about cool stuff. And, excuse me, somebody cut out one of these little short stories, sent it to me. I said, hey, this sounds like stuff you guys would be interested in. And it was about this Army colonel, a guy named Colonel Jim Channon, who had created this mythical Army unit called the 1st Earth Battalion. And they were a combination of Peace Corps, Vista, Special Forces, right? And he was an artist, so he had created this 100-page, manual for the 1st Earth Battalion. Now, get this guy. So he's East Coast, not quite a West Pointy, but came up through the officer corps. I got the Army to send him to school about 6 times. So he had 6 or 7 different degrees, but his primary love was art. He had convinced the Army that as they were interested in exploring what was then emerging as this human potential movement out in California. So he got the Army to send him to go and do all these different human potential courses. Okay. So he did EST and Life Springs, and he went to Esalen Institute and did, all this kind of stuff, different kinds of psychology and whatnot. And in fact, they even made a movie out of some of the stuff he did. It's a kind of a cult classic called The Men Who Stare at Goats. And some of the guys are in there. It's like, I met all these guys,
okay,
right? So Channon's doing this stuff, and somebody sends me this article, and he's talking about, they're trained in Aikido and energy healing and, all this cool stuff. And I'm like, oh, that guy sounds like right. I want to talk to him. So I'm a 32-year-old guy. What do I know about how you find some guy in the Army? So I'm, pick up the phone. I call the Pentagon.
Yeah.
Hi, how do I find this Colonel Channon? Well, where are these in the Army? Okay, well, I'm going to give you over to the Department of the Army. So they send me the Department of the Army, same thing. How do I find this guy, Colonel Channon? Hold on, we'll get you the directory. Okay, Colonel Channon. He could have been anywhere on the planet, right?
Yeah.
Colonel Channon's at Fort Lewis, Washington.
Oh, right down the street from UW.
45 minutes away, right? Okay, how tough can this be? So the process repeats itself. Call Fort Lewis, Colonel Channon. Okay, we'll transfer you. And I get the, 25 Sergeant Schmedlap, how can I help you, sir? Looking for Colonel Channon. Oh, hold on. Let me see if I can catch him. So you got to get the imagery. So the phone goes down on the desk. You hear the chair slide back. The feet disappear. The door slam. The gravel crunch. And it's silent. And then pretty soon it starts back up. Only it's 2.
Yeah.
This Jim Channon, and we get to talking. It was his last day in the Army.
Wow.
His car was packed up. He was just starting up to leave. I would have missed him. Another 10 seconds, and I would have missed him. So I tell him who I am. He invites me down to his place. He's got this house down in Steilacoom, which on the first floor is the house. Basement, he's got his own little war room down there with all these depictions of all this different stuff from his books and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, wow. And he and I get to talk because we know how to do a bunch of this stuff that he's just theorizing about, right? So he takes us back to talk to this group. It was called Delta Force, but not the anti-terrorism group. It was a think tank of junior and mid-level officers across all the services trying to figure out how they break down this continuous bureaucratic bulwark that stops progress, right? And so they created this model, if you will, called Air-Land Battle 2000. So this was in the 80s, and they're looking out to 2000 as the future.
I see, okay.
And the basic summary they came up with is, well, we've got a big problem because we've got like a 10-circuit tank and a 2-circuit soldier. How do we bridge that gap? And they're kind of staring at each other, and we, of course, go, well, that's funny you should ask, So we start talking, they listen, they go, okay, next thing I know, we're invited to come and make a pitch at Fort Hood, Texas, right? Now, you got to get it. Like you said, I'm from Seattle. I've never been to Fort Hood, Texas. It's August. So I get down there to Texas. We arrive at night. I get up in the morning, and I'm from Seattle. This is like, I got my little blue blazer and my shirt and my tie, and I open the door to the hotel room. I'm like, oh, I just stepped into hell. That's 98 degrees and 90%, 99% humidity, and it's 8:30 in the morning. Oh my God. I had to go back inside and get a new shirt. I was like, what is this? So we get over there. We get in this room full of colonels, and they're talking, and they kept making references to how they came, and I'm kind of like curious how, they kept making references about the work we did with the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm just kind of smiling and thinking to myself, we didn't do anything with Dallas Cowboys. But, okay, whatever. So we keep talking. And oh, yeah, Dallas Cowboys. Oh, yeah, me and Roger.
Yeah,
just like that. What,
Mr. Staubach?
Yeah. So we're, they're like, well, here's all these problems. They got drug abuse and alcohol abuse, and too many guys are overweight, and the soldiers can't pass their physical fitness test. They got crime in the barracks, Article 15s, morale's lousy. And other than that, they're ready for anything. Wow. So we listened for a while, and they wanted us to just focus on the physical training problem. How do we get these guys to pass the physical fitness test? And I listened, I was like, my mother can pass that test.
Yeah. Right?
So if you've got an 18 to 24-year-old kid who can't do that, it's not because he's physically incapable. That's a wanna problem. And so I listened, and we said, okay, look, here's our brief summary. Please don't be offended. You as an institution, the Army, still got a little hangover from Vietnam. Right? Yeah. You have convinced yourselves that the way to solve that is you send your junior and mid-grade officers off to business school where they get master's degrees in management and come back and you look at all these problems and you try and take them apart just like a manager in a factory would to their component parts. And in so doing, you do two things. One, you've lost sight of the difference between management and leadership. Mm-hmm. You don't manage soldiers to fight and die. You lead them. Yeah. And two, by pulling the cloth apart to the threads and focusing on the threads, you've lost sight of the whole cloth, right? Yeah. So we'll show you how you solve all these things at the same time. And they're gobsmacked, like, huh? I said, no, really. He said, well, okay, tell us how. I said, well, okay. We laid out this dun. Oh, that's amazing. How much is it going to cost? I said, well, how the hell would I know? I don't know. I was like, hey, we just made this up. You're here. Yeah. It's not like I'm here selling you Campbell's soup and this is tomato at 19 cents a can. I was like, I don't know. Well, take a lunch break and come back and let's start this out. We're excited.
Yeah.
Okay. So we go over to the Sizzler in Killeen, Texas.
Oh, yeah.
And I got my little yellow pad, and this was a classic. I'm making up these numbers.
You got your calculator?
I got my calculator, and I got the angel and the devil, and this costs this. Oh, wait a minute, aren't you the guy who complains about the $400 hammers and the $600 toilet seats? Well, of course I am. I don't know what it costs to do this stuff. I never worked with the government before. We'll go in and we'll negotiate. It'll be fine. Quit your whining. So this goes back and forth and back and forth. And we come up with this number, it was like, I forgot, $92,000 or something for this 3-month-long program. Now, in 1982, that's a lot of money, especially working with all my broke athletes, right? So I'm sitting there going, well, we'll talk about it. Let's go find out. So we go back. And I write this thing up on a flip chart, and I'm going through it, and I notice it's getting increasingly quiet as I get to the bottom, and I draw the line at $92,000. And nobody says a word. And I'm starting to go, ruh-roh. And then the colonel in charge turns to the guy next to me and goes, well, Colonel, what do you think? He says, well, frankly, sir, I'd rather not say in front of him. And now I'm really going. I'm like, oh, no, well, way to go, greenhead. You really blew it, Yeah. And the guy says, no, look, let's just get all the cards on the table. If we're going to do something, let's do it. If we're not, let's not. What do you think? Well, frankly, sir, we can take the armor assigned to the test unit, fire it up, and let it idle for 15 minutes and burn $92,000. That's nothing. Guy says, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Now, you guys sure you thought of everything? We want the Cadillac here, not the Volkswagen. I'm like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. Math was never my strong suit. I forgot to carry the 1. That's 192. I was a little too late for that at that point. So it was my big business lesson number 1. Know your customer.
Oh, man.
That was like a rounding error. for these guys. Their budgets are in, millions and millions.
You're doing with the United States government.
Well, not just, so they said, well, let's take you for a tour of the motor pool.
It's huge.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking motor pool.
What's the motor pool?
Well, it's like when I was in the fraternity at the UW, the guys that we didn't want, we'd say, come on, let us take you for a tour of the parking lot. Where your car will never be.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was thinking, oh, good, the motor pool.
They're taking you out.
We're there, that's it.
It's nice to see you,
the
Mr.
bums
Majer.
rush. Right? So we go to the motor pool. Not quite what I had in mind. The motor pool at Fort Hood is about a mile long. I'm guessing 2 blocks wide, and stretched out across the plain in Texas there were billions and billions of dollars of anything you can imagine. And I'm thinking there going, oh my God, this is where all of our tax dollars go to die. There's trucks, there's tanks, there's artillery pieces, personnel carriers, anti-aircraft. I mean, anything you can imagine and a bunch of stuff you can't is sitting there baking in the sun in Texas. And I just like, whoa. Now I get it.
Yeah.
$92,000.
$92,000.
That's the.
I can't buy the boots for this.
That's the copy paper budget for.
Yeah.
So business lesson number 1. Well, we were there by accident. They thought we were somebody else.
So they're talking about the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, they were thinking.
You're like, your only connection is where the Seattle Seahawks.
Exactly. So
they thought you were somebody else.
They thought we were somebody else. They thought we were some firm that they'd read about from Dallas. And
this is definitely destiny.
That's what I said. Providence smiling on us. And
Providence smiling on you.
Who am I to contradict them? So they gave us like the worst unit on the base. They didn't tell us that at the time. They gave us the worst unit on the base. And we worked with them for 7 weeks, 6 or 7 weeks. And by the time we were done, they'd gone from worst to second place in the combination of, the variables they use to measure performance.
Yeah.
Right. So they were pretty stunned by that. And then the guy next door had a little Harry Met Sally experience, Ooh,
Yeah.
I'll have what they're having.
Yeah, let me try that out.
Well, this was George Patton's old unit, the Tiger Brigade.
Oh, wow.
And we lit them up, because now, the first time, it's always a little rough. Now we knew what we were doing.
Was it lucky? Was it,
No, that was good. And then we got into a political minefield with the internal bureaucracy of the Army. FORSCOM, which is Forces Command, which are the guys that fight, and TRADOC, which is Training and Doctrine. Pretty much these guys don't want these guys around when bullets are flying because they're like, the nerdy policy.
Yeah.
And these guys don't trust these guys to be around when the bullets aren't flying because they're cowboys and they make trouble and, So in any case, TRADOC is setting these policies about training, and we were just running afoul of them. They'd had their own fitness trainer program. It didn't work.
Yeah.
They did a head-to-head comparison the second time we did it. Again, they didn't tell us. So they did their program. We did our program. They came and measured 6 months later.
Yeah.
What was different? Our guys had rocketed. Their guys showed no difference.